All right, so after going out and rallying alongside Staten Island Amazon workers who are currently trying to form the second Amazon labor union here in the United States, Senator Bernard Sanders is now ramping up the pressure on the Joe Biden administration to do something radical, and that is just simply follow through on one of your campaign promises. So here from Politico, they say Sanders pressures Biden on Amazon unions. The time for talk is over. So basically what Bernie Sanders is talking about in this specific instance, and we're going to get into some of the details here, but it's this $10 billion contract via the NSA that is essentially for Amazon Web Services cloud computing abilities. And Bernie Sanders' point is Joe Biden on the campaign trail came out and he made a promise to not award any federal contracts to corporations who are engaging in illegal union busting activity. Now, Joe Biden's own NLRB has already made the conclusion and ruled that Amazon is guilty of illegal union busting activities, so really shouldn't be something that is too difficult of a decision to make for a president who considers himself to be like the most pro-union president in modern American history, as Joe Biden frequently calls himself. So let's get into some of the details here. They say Bernie Sanders says that Joe Biden's the most pro-union president he's ever seen. The bar for that is really low. So, I mean, I guess you could say, arguably, at least Joe Biden has not been actively hostile towards unions as most U.S. presidents have been in the neoliberal era. But, you know, again, the bar is basically through the floor when we're talking about being the most pro-union president in modern history. But he says, at least rhetorically speaking, and I think that's pretty accurate, now he's leaning on his 2020 primary rival to match those words with action. So the Vermont Senator sent Biden a Tuesday letter obtained by Politico asking the president to cut off federal contracts to Amazon unless the massive company stops what he calls illegal anti-union activity. Now, again, it's not just what Bernie Sanders is calling illegal union busting activity. It's what Joe Biden's own National Labor Relations Board is also calling illegal union busting activity. Now, if there's one thing that I would commend Biden for doing in a pro-union sense, even with all of his other dramatic failures on this front, he has actually managed to put in place a National Labor Relations Board that has been very aggressively pro-union. Now, unfortunately, the NLRB is still drastically underfunded and under-resourced, so they're not able to reach their full potential, but that is something that is relatively good that Joe Biden has done. But of course, they choose to frame this as if it's like Bernie Sanders' opinion instead of objective reality. But they say, as the Senate Budget Committee chair, Sanders will also hold a hearing next week dedicated to calculating how many federal contracts go to companies that are fighting back against unionization efforts with a focus on Amazon. So he's putting together this hearing that he's going to be doing where he's essentially calling out Joe Biden on this essentially campaign lie as of right now, that he is only going to be awarding these federal contracts to corporations that don't engage in union busting activities. And, you know, credit to Bernie Sanders for actually taking that step and putting them on blast like that. Now, we'll have to see exactly how much pressure this actually puts on Joe Biden, but this is a good start. And they say, while Sanders' Amazon antagonism is no surprise, his squeeze on Biden for action against the company signals a new phase of his pro-union strategy. He's urging Biden to create a new executive order that prevents companies that violate labor law from being eligible for government contracts. And asked if Biden has fallen short in his union support thus far as president, Sanders said bluntly in an interview, yes, he has. Now, he's 100% right. Of course he has. There are a million different things that Joe Biden could be doing right now to lobby on behalf of unions, or even just on a rhetorical front, even if you don't want to talk about the substance of, things like failing to fully fund the NLRB or failing to enact legislation and fight for legislation like the PRO Act. Even if you just want to talk about rhetorically, I mean, Joe Biden is basically trying to take this neutral stance where he says, I'm not in favor of or necessarily against specific unionization attempts. That's not a standard that he has to meet. There's no rules saying that a U.S. president has to be neutral in, the organization campaigns surrounding these unions. He could be going to Staten Island, similar to how Bernie Sanders and AOC were doing recently. He could go and show up and rally alongside Chris Smalls. He could invite Chris Smalls to the White House. He could, give him a platform to be able to speak to Amazon workers and encourage them to go join and form unions, and also be more aggressively cracking down rhetorically on Amazon for their illegal union busting activity. I mean, Imagine what type of results would come from that type of spotlight from a U.S. president using his platform in order to shine a light on some of these illegal activities. But Biden isn't really doing any of that. He's just, trying to pretend as if he's basically just virtue signaling as if he's this massively pro-union president, while on the substance of it and on the policies of it, basically taking a somewhat neutral stance. But he continues saying, President Biden has talked more about his support for unions than any president I can remember. That's good, but the time for talk is over. Workers need action now. And what Biden talked about during the campaign is that if large corporations engage in illegal anti-union activity, they will not be eligible for federal contracts. Well, Amazon is engaged in illegal anti-union activity. And they say Biden's stated goal of becoming the most pro-union president has mixed success, to say the least. And they give a little bit of context here, saying the Senate has obviously not passed the Protecting the Right to Organize Act that would enable more workers to form a union. But union allies who helped him win the office say they have no buyer's remorse, pointing to the oft unilateral actions such as appointing, again, union-friendly nominees to the National Labor Relations Board, pushing for policies that would ensure federally funded projects go to contractors with unionized workforces, and creating a task force, again, kind of virtue signaling here, but creating a task force to promote unionization in the public and private sectors. And he says, all I am asking the president to do is what he explicitly stated that he would do during the campaign. It's the right thing to do, and this is the time when working people need to know that the president is on their side. So listen, he's 100% right on not just the substance of this, but also just on the political side of this. I mean, Democrats are currently on track to get absolutely slaughtered in the 2022 midterms, and I covered recently on this channel the polling results that are showing that Americans are overwhelmingly in favor of these Amazon unionization attempts, and more generally just unions right now as a whole. So Biden could lean into that, and if you want to actually portray yourself as the most pro-union president in modern American history, well, go fucking prove it. Go bring Chris Smalls to the White House. Go stand in solidarity with them. At least, put out a statement that is explicitly stating that you do think workers should vote in favor of these unionization attempts. I mean, there's a million different things that Joe Biden could be doing rhetorically to ramp up the pressure on Amazon, to ramp up and basically lean into this ongoing American revitalization of the labor movement. There are so many different ways that he could be going about this in a much more effective way, and these contracts are just one of them. Now, another broader point that probably should be made here is, why the fuck are we giving trillion-dollar companies like Amazon federal contracts worth billions of dollars in the first place? I mean, they don't need our fucking money. Why are we, awarding corporations who frequently skirt hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes every year, and billionaires like Jeff Bezos who pay lower effective tax rates than average working class people? Why are we giving them any money? I mean, it's just, completely ridiculous that we're basically allowing them to loot the treasury. We are allowing them to loot American taxpayers while they go and simultaneously aren't even paying the same tax rate as average Americans. It's just a completely ridiculous system. This contract honestly shouldn't be awarded to Amazon at all, period. But especially if Joe Biden wants to actually place himself in line with being one of the most pro-union presidents in American history, well, fucking go prove it. I mean, take any number of these actions, specifically in this case on the executive order, to follow through on something that you actually promised on the campaign trail. I mean, it'll make sense from not only an economic perspective, with helping workers to, fight back against corporations who are massively exploiting them right now, but it'll also help in a political sense, as Democrats are still on track again to get absolutely curb stomped in the 2022 midterms.